This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
Josh, this is a big time of year again because it's time the kids start back to school.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And we watch the kids during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So RJ goes to work,
Yeah.
so he's not here during the day.
Yeah.
Your sister works at night,
Mm-hmm.
so we have them overnight, and then we have them the next day because when she works overnight, she needs to sleep the next day.
Yeah.
So if we have them, she goes to work, we have them that night, and then we have them the next day. If she works the next night, we have them that night, then we have them the next day.
Yeah.
And then she will get them before dinner then on the third day.
Okay.
So we do have them a lot. And
yeah. I've noticed.
And now, I know, and now they go back to school.
Yay.
So, yeah, so we've taken them to school we've taken them to school for, 3 days this week. Anyway, beginning of school. So,
cool.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. So they're in first grade and second grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I realized and I think about, but I just wanted your take on it, is that when there's summertime for kids,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no school.
Right.
I'm going to try to break this down because I have lots of questions.
Okay.
Okay. Going back to school creates its own stressors.
Right.
Having a new routine creates different kinds of stressors. But in some regards, is there anything easier about it since you go from not necessarily having a routine to having this set routine every single day?
Yes, there is. It's actually a lot. Sorry, it's actually a lot easier to. It's a lot easier to not necessarily worry about what's coming next because you know what's coming up next, and none of it is really a surprise in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, you're still finding out all kinds of new things within those classes,
Mm-hmm.
or within that structured time. But it's all it's not rigid, but it's all very...
It's routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's planned out.
So I remember for you and your sister and Connor and Madison, not this year yet because they're just the first week for them,
Mm-hmm.
but last year they knew what day was going to be library, they knew what day was going to be music, they knew what day was going to be gym.
Yeah.
And so while they're in elementary school, they have one classroom, but they leave the classroom and go to those locations to have their
Different classes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was going to say extracurriculum, but I guess it's part of their curriculum. It's just out of their classroom.
Right.
And they know when those days are.
Yeah.
They know it. I can ask them. So we have this conversation with Madison, not so much Connor, but Madison, that she loves to wear dressier kind of shoes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say girly shoes because, I mean, she's just, if it's frilly, if it's, pretty, if it's a dress, and she just wants everything about it, bows and all that stuff. So she's got some shoes that are acceptable at school because you're not allowed to wear open-toed shoes,
Okay.
right? But she has closed-toed shoes that are not high heels, but they're still rubbery on the bottom so that she won't slip.
Right.
And she wears those. But we have this conversation, is it, because I don't know, so when she's sleeping here, I'll say, do you have gym? And, because if she's going to wear a dress, she still needs to wear tennis shoes.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But if it's going to be a gym day...
She shouldn't be wearing a dress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, she can be tumbling or whatever, we don't know. So, try to put her in shorts or pants, depending on what time of year it is.
Right.
Anyway, that is something that even that is routine for them. It gets to be routine.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me what it's like, if you remember, what it was like when school first started. So the first day or the first week before that routine was understood.
Right. So, from what I remember, middle school was where it really started being different, where you had multiple different teachers.
Correct.
And where you would go to different classrooms for every class, pretty much.
Right.
I remember elementary school, or primary, depending on where you live, I guess, or whatever.
I think it's, yeah, I mean, in the United States it's called elementary school.
Yeah, that's the first 5 years of schooling.
Mm-hmm.
Or thereabout.
When it's interesting, because when I went to school, I grew up in Pacific Beach, San Diego, California. And I went through elementary school through 6th grade.
Mm.
And then our middle school, or we called it junior high, was 7, 8, 9. And then the high school was 10, 11, 12.
Right.
That's different some places.
Yeah, so, like for me, elementary school was 1st through 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Middle school was 6th, 7th, 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And high school was 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if they're all that way now. I don't know. California does their own thing. So yes, but what I'm wondering about is, I think for anybody, autism or not, it's the unknown that can be unnerving. It can be, the anticipation of something new.
Right.
Just don't know what's going to happen.
Right. So while I still remember your question, let me finish it.
Okay.
So elementary school, you'd have the same teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, you'd have another teacher that you'd go to for like music class or whatever, but it would be for the most part the entire class going as a group.
Yes.
Whether it be to the computer's lab or whatever.
Right.
With middle school, there was a lot more going on. You wouldn't share classes with everybody all the time. Because you had, first off, there was different home rooms for each grade.
Mm-hmm.
Elementary school had that too, where there would be a few teachers, but that would be the group you'd stay with for the most part. But with middle school, it was,
They were teams.
There were teams, and then within that, there was also homeroom. Mm-hmm. All the teachers had a homeroom class. Mm-hmm. And
so if the teacher taught English and that was your homeroom, then that English class was your homeroom.
Yeah.
If the teacher taught science, then
they were your homeroom class, that was your first class of the day.
Right. And then that was separated in two, so your colors were purple and white.
For the school colors, and that's what the teams were, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you had different homerooms within the teams, but it was kind of easy to follow because they had it laid out that this homeroom on this color is doing this.
Yes.
So it was fairly well laid out that you kind of knew what to expect.
Yeah.
But I do remember when you started middle school, that's when, before you ever started, the doctors and the school kind of came together and said, yeah, he is not going to do so well in middle school on his own. Right. And there's this thing called a TSS, which is a therapeutic staff support. And that's when that person in that job title met you at school and stayed with you till you got on the bus.
Yeah.
And kind of and the reason for that is because you have I think to this day have a hard time learning something and taking it and applying it to real time.
Right. Like, to explain that a little bit further, I have difficulties taking what I'm agreeing I should do in a given situation from a conversation with like a therapist at the doctor's office, whatever, and taking that knowledge of what I need to do and actually using it in an actual situation. There was a disconnect there that I could not connect the two in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the TSS would do would be, wow, sorry, they would monitor what I was doing and not interrupt what was happening, but immediately after the fact would pull me aside and help me strategize. Hey, what did I do right? What could I have done differently? So on and so forth. And it really helped me be able to connect what I am supposed to do in any situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say too, I've said this before on this podcast, that the TSS said that she felt like a bouncer often because, you needed things to be just so. You needed things to be the same way all the time. You needed things to be your way because back then you had a difficult time seeing that anybody else would have a different perspective. And that was legitimate.
Yeah.
So, as I'm saying this to you now...
It wasn't me being a jerk about it. It was just that it never occurred to me.
Look, it sometimes felt like it. It sometimes felt like it, but yes, that's what we learned, is that's you didn't have a clue that somebody else would really, truly have a different perspective than you did. And what it did was it caused difficulties for you. Initially in middle school. Now, by the time you got through middle school, because you are who you are, with your kindness and huge heart and just the gentle nature of who you are, you gained a lot of, I'll say the word friends, but
they were a bit more than acquaintances, but not quite friends, right?
But they were all happy to see you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
it was so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, even after I graduated high school, we'd be driving down the road, and if the windows were down or whatever, and someone pulled up beside us, they'd see me in the car.
Yeah.
Hey, JD.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
And because that's what I went by was JD in middle school and high school.
Because there were so many Joshes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And so I just, that was something that was amazing, and the only thing that I can attribute that to is just that you are who you are. And you stayed true to yourself, just did things your way, and you were just kind and supportive of others, and and it was really something that I think nobody expected, because you worked so hard to get there, and because it really was truly difficult.
Yeah. And I remember meeting up with people during high school, and I had gone to 4th and 5th grade in elementary school with some of these people, and there was a mental disconnect with them with how I was in elementary school and how I was then. They didn't recognize me at first, and it's like, hey,
I worked to get here.
Yeah. And I whenever I'd first see him again like that, I'd apologize for how I was in elementary school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and because I was a wild child. It wasn't always a lot of the issues I had in elementary school. a lot of them weren't, looking back on it and with what I've learned and everything, a lot of it was not intended to be mean to me or anything like that. It was very much a not necessarily a miscommunication, but along those lines, where I interpreted what they were doing as something different than what they were.
Well, and, I think it's important for you to remember and to realize, if you don't, is that back then, people didn't have an understanding of autism and what that means for the for you, what that was like, everything that you were experiencing. And certainly people didn't know how to really help parents or the teachers.
Right.
And it was by the time you got into middle school, had there become kind of a cohesiveness that made sense. But in the school setting, and we're so fortunate that we lived where we did, so that they had those opportunities for you. But yeah, I mean, it was something that was very difficult for you. So I'm asking about school because I'm thinking, elementary school was difficult for you. But I'm thinking, and because it just kind of hit me, well, when you go to school, it's regimented.
Yeah.
There's a routine.
Yeah.
So I'd never thought about that in those regard. Well, back then, Yeah. I mean, I was just overwhelmed trying to get you to, put on a pair of socks in the morning was, was an ordeal. So.
And it's a lot of it. So let me be clear about this then. There are two completely different sides to going to school. One is the structured classes and the times for things to happen at in a certain time and where and everything like that. But the other side of that is that it's not just classes that are happening. There's a lot, and I mean a lot, of social interactions going on as well that, especially in elementary school, I didn't understand or the ones I thought I understood took way too seriously. Well, and so a lot of times I would see something happening that wouldn't mesh up with what I thought was supposed to be happening. Like the response to something is supposed to be a certain thing, and that's it.
Correct.
And I was still having difficulty understanding that it's not just one response that is allowed or whatever.
That is allowed?
Yes.
Okay.
Or that is proper or whatever.
Right.
And so, me needing to have, whenever you're supposed to line up for lunch or whatever, or to change classes, it's supposed to be a line. The line is straight. It led to a lot of difficulties in the line regards, and that's just one thing. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. I think, you needing to be first at that particular time, and you needing for other people to conform. And I'm glad that you put it that way, because it was how you interpreted something should be. And when you interpreted something should be a certain way, it didn't compute to you that other people had a different way of doing it.
Right, or that there could be different answers or whatever. And then it doesn't always have to be so rigid and albeit a pun, straight in line.
But it was very stressful for you when other people were not doing something immediately that they were told to do.
Right.
Or that they were not doing it the way that you thought that you interpreted it as being.
Right.
And so, yeah, it started, the resistance, you essentially telling the other kids that they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And then they would get upset with you, and then, that kind of, you think about that day after day, you dealing with that, and the other kids dealing with that, and it just kind of,
and it became very easy for the other kids to do little tiny things that, looking back on it, yes, a lot of the times it was to irk me or set me off or whatever.
Right.
But they were usually such little things that they wouldn't get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, some of the things were not necessarily intentional like that. Some of them very much were things where they didn't realize that they were doing something at all, and they happened to look at me or whatever whenever it would occur, or in my general area or whatever, and so it's a lot of looking back. It's a lot of things that could have been different had I known what I know now.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting that you're able to look back at that and recognize those things. I will say, though, you have a maturity level now where you're able to look back and you could do things differently now, but back then you were doing the best that you could.
Yeah.
Those,
with what I knew and what I...
Well, you would get triggered, and
Yeah.
things had to be routine. And anybody that upset that routine, you were not upset with them per se, but it would just upset you.
Right.
And so one of the things I'm wondering about, wanted to know about the schools, that's why we're talking about this, is that kind of in the summertime, excuse me, this over the summer, it would be I would do things with the kids that were consistent. Like, they were these $2 movies at the Regal Theater. And I think this is across the country, so next summer when this comes up, at a Regal Theater all over the country, I believe, on a Tuesday and a Wednesday for $2, you can go into see a movie. They have 2 movies to choose from, so you could go on Tuesday and see one movie, and then on Wednesday you see another movie. But we didn't do that.
Right.
We got together and the kids had to agree on what movie we were going to see. And it was simple. If they couldn't agree on what movie we were going to see, we didn't go.
Right.
So they agreed.
Yeah.
They found the common ground usually.
Yeah.
So there was one week out of the whole summer where they just kind of went, we don't want to see either one of those. But they were movies that have been out already.
Yeah, so which is why they could do it for cheaper and everything.
Yeah, they're already on Netflix or whatever at this point. And but it was fun. It was like one of them was SpongeBob.
One of the SpongeBob movies?
Yeah, something about underpants too. I don't remember something about underpants, but
I don't know.
Minions, that was funny.
Minions?
Yeah. Those guys are funny. Have you seen them?
Well, I mean...
You don't understand what they're saying, but you know what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And then now and then they'll say a word
Yeah.
that you'll understand. And they'll be talking about the other person. I mean, it's just really funny.
Yeah. And I remember you and I, just us, went and saw Despicable Me in theaters, which is what Minions is based out of.
Yes.
Was from the series Despicable Me. And you laughed and laughed and laughed through that movie.
I just think those little minions are hysterical. Yeah, they crack me up.
Yeah.
But we saw movies like that. So my point is that even though it was summertime, they could count on that. That was something that was routine.
Yeah.
They would go to swim. Either I didn't take them. Their mom or their dad did. They had swim I think on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right.
Evenings.
Right. I know that several times throughout the summer, they'd have that in the evenings on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
But earlier than that, they'd actually go to a different pool.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time in the water.
Yeah.
This summer, but I'm saying that because even for the kids, this is what made me think about this, is that they had routine in that there were certain things that they would do with a certain adult, and then because of the work schedules all the time, even now,
Yeah.
like your sister just got her work schedule. She's working 4 nights this week.
Oh boy.
It's usually 3. Well, that means the kids are going to be here 4 nights. But that doesn't mean that I'm watching them 4 nights because I have shows coming up. So I just got the schedule this morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, it's but in the summertime they do different things with different adults,
right.
and it was kind of that became kind of routine. But when they started school, it's Connor experienced something that reminded me of you. And there's this kid, oh shoot, I can't remember his name, that has been in 2 years with Connor, and he is a bully.
Mm.
And he is not somebody that the other kids want to be around.
Right.
Because he bullies Connor especially,
mm-hmm.
but he will bully anybody that is near him.
Mm-hmm.
He fakes being nice, and then he's really mean. And he says mean things, and he does mean things, and he's got a vocabulary that is one that I've not heard kids have in any of the, whether it was you two growing up or me growing up or the like grandbaby so far.
Like bad or?
She isn't bad, yeah, but just kind of also street smart.
Okay.
So the vocabulary is, because I forget what it's called. Oh, what did he say? I can't remember because now I'm drawing a blank. Connor just asked me something if I know what that was, and I said I do know what that is. Do you know what that is? I said no, but so and so said that. No, okay. Anyway, so Connor, when he goes to school, he didn't know yet if this bully was going to be in his classroom because on the back to school night he wasn't there.
Okay.
Doesn't mean he wasn't going to be in the class, but
right.
His name is Zaire.
Okay.
Zaire. I just remembered that.
I don't know who that is,
okay.
But yeah.
So then this first week of school, Connor's been here. He's talking about Zaire and how they did something, and I said, Zaire, is he being kind this year? He goes, no, this is a different Zaire. A different Zaire. Like I'd never heard that name, and then I hear there's 2 kids in the school named Zaire.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool name.
Yeah.
But the bully Zaire is not in Connor's class.
Okay.
The friendly Zaire is, and Connor is having a wonderful experience with him.
Cool.
Yeah. But that is something that I felt like when you were in elementary school that happened a lot, was that I was not even elementary, I was at your school all the way through,
Yeah.
But
especially elementary.
because it got really frustrating, but yeah, just trying to help you to be okay.
Yeah.
Trying to be present and to, I think that always is helpful, no matter if a kid has autism or he doesn't.
Having that support, yeah.
Yeah, because if the school sees the parent's face and the grandparent's face, and they're there and they're interacting and they're going on field trips, which they wouldn't let you go on a field trip unless I went, but
yeah.
they, I think it's important just to show that, that to be present.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out that it never occurred to me that was why you were always there. I always I guess I just took that for granted, was that, hey, we're going on a field trip. Mom wants to help. Yay.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and
you're right, though. I would have wanted to go on the field trips with you anyway.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
Yeah.
It's just that at some point they said, you can't go unless I go.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because other people didn't know. If they were concerned that if you were out and you had an incident or a meltdown or something, that no one else would be able to reach you.
Right.
And so they were concerned. And again, this was back before they really knew,
Right. There wasn't a whole lot of information that was correct about autism, let alone any information.
Mm-hmm. So in the school setting anyway.
Right.
And so, yeah. But initially I went because, I wanted to go. But then, they told me that, or they didn't say that I had to go. But what they said is that if you were going to go, the way that you would be able to go is if I went as well.
Okay.
Mm. So basically, you couldn't go if I didn't go.
Okay.
And I wanted to anyway. And then how much fun did we have? Because they gave us all what I think, as the adult looking at it. I'm like, oh, I get it. You gave me all the kids that you deemed as misfits. The ones that were troubled.
They were the cool kids.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and not in like the cool kids like Breakfast Club.
No.
Not the troubling cool kids. Or troublesome cool kids, whatever you want to call it. It was, like you said, the people that others had
difficult times with. And it was, we got along fine.
Yeah.
We got along fine. Everyone listened,
Yeah.
We did things that other groups didn't do, and we went places that the others maybe didn't do.
Right.
But, it was fun.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, it's not like I did something I wasn't supposed to do.
Right.
But,
one of our things was going to Hershey Park or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a group of us like that. And each group went their own ways, but most of the other groups would stick together and do the same stuff. And we'd go and do...
We'd go to the farmers' fair. I think it's called I don't know if it's called the farmers' fair or whatever it was. But there were all kinds of different things to look at and things to do.
Yeah.
And what we did is we went further out, and they had a specialized, like, really cool ice cream vendor.
Yeah.
And we went, and then I'm like, okay, we got to get out of this, taking too long, we got to go. And then we ended up running to the bus, right?
Yeah.
That it did happen a couple times. We were, like, I would say more than a couple times. We were never late getting back to the bus.
Right.
But we were notoriously the last ones getting back to the bus.
Right. And honestly, even years later, I was still having these people come up to me and say, "That was such a great time. Remember that? That was so cool."
Mm-hmm.
And it was always a really nice memory, a nice feeling to have these people come up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it would they wouldn't come up to me and say something like that. It would be in the midst of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But it just having that, I just had a aha kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
So in middle school, but especially high school, I like you know what cliques are.
I do. Yeah.
Like there's the jocks, there's the preppy
Mm-hmm.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
I was never really a part of any of those groups.
Right.
Like, I wasn't a part of a clique, but I would still be able to interact with all of them just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be fine with me being there and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And it was...
In high school, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because the aha part of it was because these field trips, the groups that I would be in, would be all kinds of different people.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't care about that stuff. Yeah, some of us would have interests that would be different, some would be same, but none, in that particular regard, we weren't really looked well upon by others.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But at the same time, having that kind of experience, we just didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't care if we were a part of a clique or not, or that anyone else was.
Mm-hmm.
If you were nice to us, we were nice to you, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
But it's interesting that some of the kids that they would put in our group
mm-hmm.
were some that were notoriously mouthy. You know, not all. Most of them were, like you say, just kind of, I don't know, I would say maybe just didn't quite fit in.
Right,
and,
right.
And kind of had their own struggles to feel good about themselves and to make their way through, you know.
Or they were quiet kids or whatever. Just
there's only one quiet kid that they gave us, really. And
Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan. And the others were notoriously obnoxious.
They were good.
Well, for us, because they were part of the group. We included them. We asked what their opinions were.
Yeah,
you know what? We kind of
and
collectively said, okay, we can do this. We have enough time to do these two things. What are we going to do? We can go over there and do this. We can go over there and do this. They're further out. Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or if they had any ideas for other things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
And we, especially you, I guess, would ask their opinions, would take the time to listen to what they had to say, and actually listen.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is why they were they felt part of a group.
Yeah. And it was, it's...
Yeah. It became something that I really looked forward to. I felt like, I remember talking to your dad about this as it was happening, you know. So I said, you know, it seems like they didn't say this.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell them, the school didn't say that they were giving me the kids that they had troubles with.
Mm-hmm.
But they were giving me the kids they were having troubles with.
Yeah.
You know, like that.
I think that part of it, like after the first couple times at least, I think part of it was they were doing that because you were able to reach them.
I don't think it was that deep with the school, really. I don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
I think that played into it, though.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that I was always the last at the bus. You know, how many times do we have to run to the bus?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had to hurry up and get to the bus because we were having fun.
Yeah.
And like I said, we were never late, thank goodness. But we were
pushing it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And and if you're with So, you know, maybe we all got along because I was like you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe they gave the troubled kids to the troubled mom. I don't know. But yeah, so there's so many different personalities. There's so many, you know, you don't know what kids go through before they get to school.
Right.
On any given day.
Right.
You don't know what they're going home to at the end of the day. And a lot of, you know, the anxieties and frustrations that kids feel at home, they come out and they lash out at school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of times it's people just trying to get by.
Yeah.
Even if they're kids, they're just trying to do the best they can.
Yeah.
But for you, going into a routine, once it's a routine, that makes sense. But it was really hard in school because there were so many noises.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much activity.
Yeah. And a lot of times I would see another aspect of this is that we were also trying to find medication that would work.
Well, right. When you started, when you started school, of course, you weren't on any medication.
Right.
And then once it became obvious that you were not okay, that's when I talked to the psychiatrist, and it's pretty cool. Your psychiatrist was the top child psychiatrist in the military at Walter Reed.
Yeah.
And it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And this was kind of like a breakthrough thing where sometimes we'd do telemed with them and sometimes we'd go down there.
Yeah.
But all this, he was like on the leading approach to, kids on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're really fortunate to have had that group as, him as the head psychiatrist, but,
yeah.
To have all of them. And I just remember telling him that I'm not interested in making the teachers' lives easier. That's not why we're talking about medication at this point.
Right.
I said, is there anything else that we can do? And it didn't look like it because we have had all kinds of therapies.
Yeah.
And, but you didn't have this was still in elementary school.
Right, so there wasn't a lot of options to begin with.
Right, and you just were having such a hard time functioning.
Yeah.
And, so that they recommended that. And I said, if you can explain to me why and how this helps him and how it makes his life better, then okay. But if it's to make my life easier or the teacher's life easier, the answer is no.
Right. And one thing that I also really appreciated and appreciate now still is that you guys always you always talked me through things and explained to me that not only is this my choice to do this or not, but you always kept me in the loop of this is what it's supposed to do. If it's not helping you, please let us know. If it's awesome, let us know. And just
I remember, yes, all of the medications you've ever been on, we would describe to you what it was for,
mm-hmm.
and how it was described to be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
I want to know, does it make you hungry? Does it make you less hungry? Does it make you tired? Does it make you not sleep well?
Right.
Does it help you to concentrate? Does it not? Does it help you to feel like situations are easier to navigate or not?
Right.
And just every which direction.
Yeah.
And
to be clear, this is also a time when the medications for autism, there really still aren't really any specifically for autism.
Right.
There are medications for things that typically go along with autism,
mm-hmm.
whether that be ADD/ADHD,
mm-hmm.
Depression, anxiety, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's medications for those.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the medications that are out now for those things weren't around whenever I started taking medicine. As a matter of fact, there was only a small handful of them that were still being, if not tested, then still fleshing out everything that it would go with.
I mean, there's some that, you're absolutely right. It was so limited. One made you gain weight.
Yeah.
And you had to have blood work all the time to check your liver function, and it was just bad. They were bad news, and it was like, why, so we took you off that one. I'm so happy that you went off that one shortly after you started it.
Yeah.
But the side effects are just like, what? It doesn't make sense. Yeah. But that's a complicated thing. But to get back to the original questions that I was asking, is that so school can be overwhelming for anybody. You're starting something brand new.
Right.
As a kid with autism, the very first days of a new school year, the very first week of a new school year, what was that like typically?
It was, for one thing, it was always really exciting because there's a lot of not necessarily new experiences, excuse me, but looking back on it, it was more because there was a lot more structure to what my day would be. Because even in between school years, there would be things planned, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that most of the day was actually structured or planned out. It was, we have to do this at such and such a time. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really as effective, I guess I should say.
Well, you do better, even today, when you have a set schedule.
Yeah.
And in that set schedule, you have to have days where you have nothing.
Right.
In order to really fully recover
from
the things that you've done before. So it's interesting that you say that there's so many, I forget what word you said school, that you would have so many what?
Structured times or whatever.
Well, before that, there were so many new experiences or what have you.
Yeah.
Which is opposite of what you typically like.
Right. There's a lot of new experiences
mm-hmm.
That are occurring, and part of the reason I would always be excited about it would be not because it would be a fresh start or what have you, but because it was always interesting to see. I had always loved school.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always loved learning, and being at school where you are always learning stuff,
mm-hmm.
I loved it.
So we talked about it a lot, is that it's interesting you say that, because that was one of the things that we had dealt with the doctors and the therapists and stuff, which is that school itself was something that you could excel at. It's the personal...
It's the social aspect.
Yes, it's the social aspect of it that would throw you off every single time. Like, we could pinpoint it to something. And, there are things that you are a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the aspect of academics that were difficult for you, in that if you had to write something, it was really difficult for you to get started because you felt like you have to have it all together before you started it.
Right.
And if you wrote the first sentence wrong, then it would derail the whole.
Right, or if I thought of something that could preclude what I had just written better, and trying to get all that down by writing in it wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
And I'd lose it, and it would be so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. And so that one was something that's very difficult.
Yeah.
For you to, and so they came up with things adaptations that would that you could do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was for you to say it and I write it.
Yeah. And
they were okay with that. So anyway, there were some things that have to do with academics that kind of, I would say to this day, they're different. They show themselves in different ways, but that is still something that you work through daily. Of how do you begin something that you feel like this angst about? I don't, I don't. You're worried that something's not going to be perfect.
Right.
But it was.
And I don't think I ever used the word perfect. I might have, but I don't think I have. I always, if I'm remembering it right, I would use the word, it was right.
Mm-hmm.
Not perfect,
mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm. It looked like it needed to be perfect, but you never used the word. Yeah, okay. That's correct. But did you look forward to seeing classmates that you had gone to school with before?
For the most part, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was another thing that I would miss, would be seeing these people that I enjoyed interacting with.
You didn't know most of their names until much later. Much later. In elementary school, you couldn't remember anybody's names. In middle school, it would actually be an active assignment of yours to get somebody's name down.
Right.
And it wasn't until high school that you began to recall people's names.
Yeah.
Or that you began to recall what people look like.
Right.
You would remember
what they wore.
Yes.
Not necessarily their faces, but I'd remember what they wore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's interesting to me that you would say that you'd be, happy to see people. But I also think it's important for people to know that we lived in a town of, typically, depending on who had passed away and who was born, a town of just shy of 300 people.
Yeah.
So, at the most.
Yeah. And it didn't have a stoplight.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it had a blinking light, I think.
No, it had a stop sign, and if you were turning right, you didn't have to stop.
Okay. Yeah. And it was technically a 4-way intersection, but one way had priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it was a very, very small town, and that means that the school, in elementary school, was very little.
Yeah.
And it was, we didn't live in the country, but we lived quite a ways. I don't know. 15 minutes to the grocery store?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the ride was beautiful because it was just these hills in Pennsylvania that's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely beautiful.
And so where we lived had homes nearby all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But once you got out of where we lived, out of the town, then it was not necessarily wilderness, but a lot more farms and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
all around.
Farms and just open.
And woods and
mm-hmm.
stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, and these just rolling hills.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would tell you kids, like, just, what a beautiful ride you had to school. Like, when you guys started taking the bus. It's like, what a beautiful ride every day.
Yeah.
It's like, don't take that for granted because it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'd be covered with snow. The most beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you'd be happy to see people because it was those very people that would just bother you so much during the school year.
Yeah.
So really it was excitement of something new. You always had new clothes. You always had new shoes.
And new backpack and
mm-hmm.
lunchbox and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was, in your mind, something that we didn't talk about, in your mind, you liked it because you knew it was going to be routine?
Looking back on it, I can see that.
Yeah.
At the time, I had no inkling of that.
Okay.
Yeah. It was because there's a juxtaposition in this.
Okay.
That without the structure of the school year, that the summers would be not as clear cut or whatever. But the juxtaposition is that I didn't necessarily care about that.
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid playing, running around, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or reading, or what have you.
Mostly reading.
Yeah, and mostly reading.
Mm-hmm.
Or kicking a soccer ball.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always... It was not really something that I would consider when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back on it, having those classes that I knew where I was supposed to be at any given time.
Mm-hmm. School was very stressful for you.
It was, but it wasn't necessarily because of the classes.
It was all the people.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the social cues or whatever that I had no clue about.
Mm-hmm.
And having to deal with that and also deal with the things that I thought I understood, but didn't necessarily fully get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the lines, standing in line doesn't have to be a perfect line. Doesn't have to be at attention kind of thing like a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was likened to a drill sergeant whenever it was time to line up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sometimes. Where you were meticulous.
Yeah.
You were meticulous, and you wanted to sit in the same seat, and you wanted to be in the same spot in line.
Yeah.
And you wanted to have things to be, kind of predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was those things that were very, very upsetting to you, when those things that should be a certain way and they were not.
Right.
And then also that's when it became a big deal. This was what really caused problems more than anything else, when there would be rules and then some kids wouldn't follow them and they would not have consequences, but then somebody else wouldn't follow them and then they would have consequences.
Right.
That was something that was really, truly devastating to you, to try to move through that and manage that whole, because it didn't compute and it just didn't make any sense. If it is this, then it's this.
Not only sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can't. Yeah. You can't pick and choose. It is or it isn't.
Right.
And so, you would tell teachers that.
Yeah.
And back then, a little guy saying to a teacher, essentially, hey, you're not being consistent and it's not cool. That's not what you would say,
because
but essentially,
because I wouldn't be able to
articulate it. But absolutely. Yeah. So,
and that would get me in trouble.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So, any advice? Because I'm gonna wrap this up now.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice that for parents that are dealing with little people that are going back to school, that and even for me, with Connor going back, and it's just the first week and he seems happy and and
well, first I'll do it for the parents, then the teachers, then the kids.
Okay.
So for the parents, having your kid know that they're there to support them, and that they're wanting to know what's going on is really big. It's
so ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions and let your kid know that if they have any troubles or whatever, that they can ask you for help or share what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm. And get excuse me, get involved and be at the school. I had lunch duty so many times. I hated lunch duty, but I was there, a couple times a week, probably, up until you were in high school.
Yeah.
For both you and your sister, and it was like, so it's but your face is there. People see that you're there. They recognize that you as the student have support, and it helps. It all helps. I would do and still do for Connor and Madison, but the book fairs, the library events, and field day,
so for the teachers, is to I know what I'm trying to say. It's finding the words to say it.
Okay.
I guess first off, please be patient.
Mm-hmm.
I know that can be difficult as a teacher, dealing with a whole bunch of little kids, or not so little kids, but let the kids know that if they need something, they can come to you, and to try and interact with the parents as well.
Yeah. I mean, that everybody, when a kid doesn't conform,
it
doesn't mean that they're trying to be difficult.
Right. It could be that we're having a difficult time.
Mm-hmm. And different isn't bad.
Right. That's, yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And for the kids, it's okay to be different, first off.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly fine.
Yep.
And that if you have an issue, one thing I always had difficulty with would be to remember something to tell you once I got home.
Mm-hmm.
Because what would happen during the day, I would essentially move on from that, and it would not come up. I would not think of it really again. Mm-hmm. And so when I got home, hey buddy, how was your day? It was okay. That was because that's how I was feeling at the time, was that I was okay.
Yeah.
So if you can somehow write it down, or have some way to remember to, if you're having an issue, have some way to either remind you or whatever, to get it, to be able to share it with your family.
Yeah, I think you had a lot of days that were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
A lot of times where it had gotten so bad that you didn't want to do anything.
Right.
And just having, again, for me, I've said this before, but I'll share it again. No TV. Until homework is done, because it does something to the brain waves, and it absolutely did. And giving you a chance to play catch was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Giving you a chance to bounce on the trampoline was helpful. And then you go to the same spot at the table when that was done, and you would listen to Bach and get your homework done.
Yeah, not lyric music though.
Mm-mm.
Because I would get caught up trying to listen to the words and sing with them even.
Yeah.
And it would distract me from actually working.
Yep.
Yeah, because think of it like a recess at school.
Mm-hmm.
You would go out. You'd go to school. You'd be working on stuff. You go outside to release some of the energy you have and come back in to continue working and have a fresh mind, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this basically was meant to be. Was you go out, throw the ball a little bit,
mm-hmm.
come back in so you can work some more.
Mm-hmm. It was kind of like just allowing you to get, clear your mind, get the energy moving.
Yeah.
You'd get a snack when you got home.
Yeah.
And we'd play catch for, quite a while.
Yeah.
And, whether it was with a football or it was with a baseball and gloves.
Yeah.
We just did that every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And it made a difference. It really did help. But that is a key. No TV.
Yeah.
Because it does something. It's like we say the music with lyrics. It totally takes you away from what it was. We could never get you back.
Right.
So if the TV was on before your homework was done, you weren't not going to get your homework done.
Right. Even if I wasn't in the room with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I was so successful in high school, though, was because I would have time at school where I wouldn't have a learning class. It would be something, I forget what they called it, what kind of class they called it, but it was essentially you're there to not do gym, not do...
Was it open period?
Basically, but you were in a specific classroom. And I would do my homework during that. And because I'm at the school and that kind of thing, it helped me to get my stuff done before having to do it at home. Because once I would be home, it would be difficult for me to focus on homework.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, to reiterate for the kids, or the students, try and get your stuff done at school if possible, and is one thing. And for another, if you can, try and make a note of any issues you have, or even just good things.
I think that might be... I know, I hear you saying that as the person you are today.
I would not have been able to.
You were not able to do those things.
Right.
And even that open period that you had that you're talking about, you would a lot of times forget that assignments were due.
Right.
Getting you to write stuff down and to stay on track with it, that was where was one of the most difficult parts, because you would totally forget that you had assignments coming up.
Right.
And it was really, by the end of the day, one of the reasons that we played ball or you bounced on the trampoline is because you were wiped out. You know what I mean? It's
socially wiped out?
Yeah, absolutely. You would be exhausted
from
all that you had to deal with. And and younger, the bullying that took place, that was, it's like it was really a difficult time for you.
Yeah.
And so it's nice that hopefully schools now don't tolerate the bullying, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
But, there were things back then when you went to school that you never had to deal with, that kids now are having to deal with.
Right.
Which is pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, as I would not get much information from you at all when you would get home. I think that's typical of most kids, How was school? Is all right.
Yeah.
What'd you do at school? Nothing.
Yeah. But with me, at least, I would mean it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be trying to just brush over stuff.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't remember a lot of the stuff.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I'll let you know how the tiny heinies are doing at school. So far, so good. They like their teachers. They're with their friends. Madison, of course, she's just so social, and she's friends with everybody she sits around, and she's she has her ballet friends at school, and she said something about a boyfriend to me, and I'm like, a boyfriend? She's in first grade.
Yeah.
So, anyway, she told me I put in her backpack a zebra cake, and the next day she goes, "Gammy, can I have 2 zebra cakes? Because I told Patrick he could have I told him I'd bring him a zebra cake." So that's her little boyfriend. So you see it. She that's when it's your boyfriend. She goes, "Well, no, we broke up." I'm like, I don't even. But she's bringing us. I don't even know why. First graders are funny. They just crack me up. Anyway, hopefully that helped. I thought of that it's just the structured part of it would probably be something that was enjoyable for you. Right. And so that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us again today.
Yeah.
And Dave has set up so we are on all kinds of sites that you can listen to us now. I believe those are going to be listed on the website. So if you go to sonyaking.com, it's SONYAKING, and they should be listed. There's a whole bunch of them now. He's even like my iHeartRadio and.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All kinds of stuff now. And so that should be listed. And anyway, send us a message if you have anything you want to talk about and want us to talk about. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We hope everybody's safe from this hurricane that's just coming through, and that just went through. And we're having the effects of it all the way up here in Virginia.
Yeah.
Storms, and it didn't knock down trees and stuff, but it knocked down limbs and everything.
Here?
In the backyard. It's pretty rough out there. So anyway, I hope everybody's safe, and I hope you're happy, and hug the people that you love.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
All right. We'll hang out next week. Love you.
Bye.